Before the invention of toilet paper, human beings used corn cobs. They used lengths of rope. They used fragments of broken pottery. And in certain parts of the ancient world, they shared a communal sponge attached to a stick. For the vast majority of human history, maintaining hygiene after using the bathroom was uncomfortable, deeply unsanitary, and occasionally downright dangerous. So, how did a simple roll of paper transform into one of the most indispensable products on the planet? This is the complete history of toilet paper. It's an item that virtually everyone uses multiple times every single day, and yet we rarely pause to consider it. But the story of toilet paper is intimately connected to urbanization, the prevention of disease, the rise of industrialization, and even episodes of worldwide panic buying. I'm Julian Vane, and this is The Parts That Made Us. This is a story of how human civilization finally learned to wipe properly. Throughout most of recorded human history, people simply used whatever materials happened to be readily available. In ancient Rome, the massive public latrines featured something called a tersorium. This was essentially a sea sponge fastened to the end of a wooden stick. After use, it would be rinsed in a channel of running salt water and then left for the next person to use. Yes, you understood that correctly. A communal sponge, shared by strangers, used by everyone who visited that particular latrine. The Romans had no concept of single-use hygiene products. The tersorium was considered perfectly normal, even sophisticated. It was part of Roman civilization's advanced infrastructure. In ancient Greece, people used fragments of broken ceramic pottery. These pieces, called pessoi, were often broken to create rough, jagged edges. Archaeological evidence shows that some Greeks even inscribed the names of their enemies on these pottery fragments before using them, which adds an entirely new dimension to the phrase, adding insult to injury. In coastal regions around the world, seashells were commonly employed for this purpose. People living near oceans had easy access to smooth shells, which were relatively effective compared to rougher alternatives. In rural areas of America, particularly during the 18th and 19th centuries, dried corn cobs became the standard bathroom material. Farmers would dry the cobs thoroughly after harvesting corn, then store them in outhouses. The texture was rough, but functional. There's even an old American folk saying, "First you use the red cob, then you use the white cob. If you see red on the white cob, use the red cob again." The humor was dark, but it reflected a very real aspect of daily life. In medieval Europe, people used whatever fabric scraps they could find. Rags, pieces of cloth, plant leaves, moss, even hay. There was absolutely no standardization because there was no centralized plumbing infrastructure remotely similar to what we have today. Waste management was already a catastrophic problem in growing cities, and the lack of proper hygiene materials made the situation exponentially worse. Paper itself was invented in China approximately 2,000 years ago, around 100 BC, but it wasn't immediately adopted for bathroom purposes. Paper was precious, expensive, and considered far too valuable for single-use applications. However, by the 6th century AD, historical records clearly indicate that paper was being utilized for hygiene purposes in Chinese society. By the 14th century, something remarkable was happening in China. The imperial court had begun mass-producing sheets of paper specifically designed for bathroom use. They were manufacturing over 720,000 sheets annually, exclusively for the royal family. These sheets were large, roughly 2 feet by 3 feet, and were perfumed for the emperor's comfort. Meanwhile, across the world in Europe, people were still relying on rags, leaves, and whatever plant material they could gather. Why such a massive disparity? The answer is simple economics. In Europe, paper remained extremely expensive. It wasn't viewed as a disposable commodity. It was far too valuable to use just once and then discard. The first commercial breakthrough came in 1857, when an American entrepreneur named Joseph Gayetti introduced what he marketed as medicated paper for the water closet. His product came in flat, unconnected sheets and was infused with aloe to provide a soothing effect. Gayetti was so proud of his invention that he printed his own name on every single sheet. This was simultaneously bold marketing and somewhat peculiar behavior. Imagine using bathroom tissue with someone's name printed on it. But despite Gayetti's confidence and marketing efforts, his product didn't achieve widespread popularity. Most people continued using whatever free materials they had available, primarily old newspapers and mail-order catalog pages. In fact, the Sears catalog became so synonymous with bathroom use in American homes that it earned the nickname the Farmer's Catalog. Many editions even included a small hole punched in the corner, specifically designed so the catalog could hang on a nail inside the outhouse. When you finished reading the product descriptions, you had a ready supply of paper. The genuine revolution arrived in 1890, when the Scott Paper Company introduced toilet paper mounted on a roll. This was transformative. The paper was perforated, making it easy to tear off sheets. It was convenient to store and use. It represented standardization in a product that had never been standardized before. But early commercial toilet paper had a significant and rather painful problem: splinters. Yes, you read that correctly. Wooden splinters. The paper manufacturing process in the late 1800s wasn't sufficiently refined. Microscopic fragments of wood fiber remained embedded in the paper, which created an uncomfortable and sometimes painful experience. It wasn't until the 1930s that paper manufacturers could confidently advertise their toilet paper as splinter-free. This was considered a major selling point. Advertisements from that era proudly proclaim this feature, which tells you everything you need to know about how rough early toilet paper actually was. As indoor plumbing systems became commonplace throughout the early 20th century, demand for toilet paper absolutely exploded, and the reason was entirely practical. Modern flushing systems required materials that could dissolve in water. Cloth rags would clog the pipes. Leaves didn't break down properly. Corn cobs were completely out of the question. Even the Sears catalog refused to dissolve. Toilet paper wasn't merely about comfort anymore. It had become essential infrastructure. The material had to be soft enough for human skin, strong enough to be functional, and weak enough to disintegrate in water. That's a remarkably difficult engineering challenge, and it took decades to perfect the formula. By the way, if you're finding this fascinating, you're exactly the kind of person who appreciates the hidden stories behind everyday objects. If you want to discover more about the parts that made us who we are, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, let's continue our story. Here's what most people fundamentally don't understand about toilet paper. It didn't just make people more comfortable, it helped cities survive. During the 1800s, rapidly expanding urban centers faced a catastrophic sanitation crisis. Human waste was literally everywhere you looked. Cesspools overflowed into streets. Water sources became contaminated with sewage. Waste piled up in alleyways and gutters. And with this overwhelming filth came devastating disease. Cholera epidemics swept through cities, killing tens of thousands of people in single outbreaks. Typhoid fever spread through contaminated drinking water supplies. Dysentery ravaged populations due to horrific sanitation conditions. Entire neighborhoods would be decimated by disease. People didn't yet fully comprehend germ theory or how diseases actually spread, but they could clearly see that something was terribly, catastrophically wrong with their cities. The solution wasn't simply installing flush toilets in homes. It required constructing an entire interconnected sanitation infrastructure, underground sewer networks spanning miles beneath city streets, waste treatment facilities, systems for delivering clean running water, and crucially, disposable materials that wouldn't destroy the plumbing systems. Toilet paper became absolutely essential to the system because it could dissolve in water. Cloth rags would clog the elaborate underground infrastructure. Newspapers would jam pipes and create blockages. Improvised materials would break the carefully engineered systems that cities were investing millions to construct. As modern plumbing infrastructure spread throughout Western cities, toilet paper transitioned from a luxury item to a fundamental necessity. It became an integral component of a much larger public health transformation that would dramatically increase average life expectancy across the developed world. Access to clean water, functional sewage systems, and proper personal hygiene materials allowed civilization to quietly stabilize itself. Infant mortality rates plummeted. deadly diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries became manageable, and the humble roll of paper sitting in your bathroom became part of that life-saving system. Fast forward to March 2020. Within just days of growing global uncertainty surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic, toilet paper completely vanished from store shelves. This wasn't isolated to one country or region. It happened across continents, across dramatically different cultures, in countries around the entire world. Why toilet paper specifically? It's not food, it's not medicine, it's not even particularly difficult to manufacture. But toilet paper is visible, bulky, and immediate. It represents control over one of the most fundamental human needs. When supply chains suddenly feel fragile and uncertain, people don't just purchase essentials, they purchase reassurance. The toilet paper shortage of 2020 revealed something profound about modern civilization. Our entire way of life depends on invisible systems functioning perfectly. Paper mills operating continuously, transportation networks moving products efficiently, retail logistics stocking shelves predictably. When those systems feel even slightly unstable, humans instinctively reach for the basics: water, food, and yes, toilet paper. Because beneath all our advanced technology and modern progress, we remain concerned with the same fundamental things that have worried humanity throughout history: how to live cleanly, how to live safely, and how to maintain basic dignity. But toilet paper represents only one element of bathroom hygiene. For most of human history, there wasn't even an appropriate place to use it. People depended on chamber pots emptied into streets, shared public latrines without privacy, or simply the nearest available outdoor space. The modern bathroom as we understand it today didn't materialize overnight. It required innovations that would transform cities, homes, and sanitation systems forever. But that's a story for another episode. From communal sponges on sticks to splinter-filled paper to panic-bought rolls in 2020, the evolution of toilet paper tells a much larger story about human civilization, public health, and our ongoing relationship with cleanliness and dignity. What began as broken pottery and corn cobs eventually became one of the most manufactured products on Earth. It's not just about comfort, it's about infrastructure, disease prevention, and the invisible systems that keep modern life functioning. I hope you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history behind this everyday object. If you found this episode of The Parts That Made Us fascinating, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, and comment below on what object or invention you'd like us to explore next. Next time, we're diving into the strange and surprisingly dramatic history of the toilet itself. Until then, take a look around your bathroom. History is everywhere, hiding in the most ordinary places.